Welcome back to the channel. Tonight, the world watches in disbelief as 79 Ukrainian drones rewrite the rules of modern warfare, striking deep into Russia's $2.117 billion Moscow military district and turning one of its most guarded strongholds into a symbol of vulnerability. This isn't just another battlefield report. It's the story of how precision, courage, and innovation shattered an empire's illusion of invincibility. Stay with me, because what happened in these few explosive minutes may have just changed the entire course of the war. Precision and asymmetry have rewritten the rulebook of modern conflict, proving that influence on the battlefield is no longer a function only of how many tanks you own, or how many billions you can pour into steel and armor. A modestly priced system, deployed intelligently and at the right moment, can create outsized tactical and strategic effects. Consider how unmanned systems, sensors and finely tuned intelligence fuse into a force multiplier. A handful of well-directed platforms can find, fix and strike high-value nodes that previously required entire brigades or air wings to neutralize. That changes the cost calculus for both attacker and defender. Where once an adversary hoped to blunt aggression by investing in expensive, centralized infrastructure, command centers, supply depots, flagship bases, today those concentrations of value become attractive targets for low-cost precision tools that exploit visibility and timing. The economics are stark. Replacing a damaged, expensive asset can take years and hundreds of millions of dollars, whereas the attacker may have expended only a fraction of that to achieve decisive operational effects. Asymmetry also forces smarter operational design. It's not enough to possess technology. Success comes from integrating it into a system of systems, where information flows faster than decisions, where redundancy and deception are part of planning, and where small units are empowered to act on real-time intelligence. Precision strikes work because they are backed by the discipline of tradecraft. Hours of reconnaissance, signals analysis, human intelligence, and careful rehearsal. They exploit the enemy's rhythms, shift changes, logistical bottlenecks, maintenance cycles, with timing that magnifies damage and sows confusion. Swarm tactics and distributed operations make use of numbers in a different way. A large number of relatively inexpensive platforms can overwhelm defenses through saturation, degrade command cohesion, and create windows of opportunity for higher value follow-on effects. That approach turns quantity into a strategic advantage without requiring parity in traditional firepower. But precision and asymmetry demand cultural change as much as technical change. Military organizations steeped in legacy thinking must learn to prize speed, modularity, and cross-domain integration. Procurement cycles that stretch for years are ill-suited to an environment where software updates and iterative hardware improvements can leapfrog standing capabilities in months. Training must emphasize decision-making autonomy at lower echelons, because when small teams can call for effects directly, latency becomes the enemy. Rules of engagement and legal frameworks must adapt too, ensuring operations retain legitimacy while taking advantage of new tools. At the same time, defense planners must accept that decentralization increases vulnerabilities in unexpected places, supply chains for critical components, cybersecurity for control links, and maintenance pipelines that keep distributed systems operational. Resilience becomes the natural counterweight to asymmetry. If concentrated value invites precision strikes, then distributed resilience, redundant nodes, hardened civil infrastructure, and dispersed logistics reduces the strategic payoff of any single attack. Effective defense is thus not simply more missiles or bigger bases. It is a layered approach combining passive hardening, active defense, deception, and rapid recovery. Civil society plays a role. Resilient communications, redundant power, and rapid repair capabilities blunt the psychological and operational shock that precision effects are designed to create. Finally, the moral dimension cannot be ignored. The effectiveness of precision tools must be matched with a commitment to discriminate between military targets and civilian life. Precision is meaningful only when it reduces unintended harm, and aligns with legal and ethical responsibilities. When that standard is met, asymmetry becomes a force for corrective justice on the battlefield, a way for defenders to restore balance against a materially stronger aggressor without abandoning restraint. Taken together, precision and asymmetry do not merely offer tactical tricks, they demand a whole-of-society response. Smarter military institutions, resilient civil infrastructure, adaptive procurement, and a steadfast moral compass. War is never just about weapons, numbers, or tactics. It is above all about people. Every successful operation, no matter how technologically advanced, carries with it a weight of moral responsibility. When a drone strike devastates a billion-dollar target, the image of destruction may thrill some as a symbol of strategic brilliance. But behind that explosion lies an unspoken truth. Human lives are always intertwined with the machinery of war. The essence of moral responsibility in conflict is not to glorify destruction, but to ensure that every action taken is bound by a sense of humanity and justice. The moment soldiers, commanders, or nations lose sight of that moral compass, victory turns hollow and meaningless. The measure of a nation's strength is not how effectively it can destroy, but how firmly it can control its power in the pursuit of peace. For Ukraine, the principle of moral responsibility has become a defining element of its struggle. Facing a larger and heavily armed adversary, Ukrainian defenders are forced to make difficult decisions daily, decisions that balance military necessity against the imperative to protect civilians and preserve their own ethical standards. In an asymmetric war, where one side relies on high-tech precision and the other on massive conventional firepower, restraint becomes a form of moral courage. The decision to strike only verified military targets, even when doing so limits short-term gains, distinguishes a defensive war rooted in justice from aggression driven by conquest. It shows the world that the Ukrainian cause is not about revenge or destruction, but about defending sovereignty, dignity, and the right to exist. Every operation that involves drones, missiles, or artillery carries an unseen chain of human effort. Analysts who identify targets, operators who make split-second judgments, and leaders who must live with the moral and political consequences of each decision. These choices cannot be made lightly, because mistakes are not measured only in military losses, but in human suffering. Precision warfare has raised expectations that technology can eliminate error, but no algorithm can fully capture the chaos and uncertainty of combat. That is why moral responsibility must remain firmly in human hands. When commanders insist on accountability, verification, and restraint, they uphold not only the integrity of their own forces, but also the moral foundation upon which lasting peace must be built. Moreover, understanding the human cost means recognizing that every explosion ripples far beyond its physical damage. Families are displaced, children grow up with trauma, cities are scarred for decades, and reconciliation becomes harder with each act of indiscriminate violence. Moral responsibility demands that every strike, no matter how justified, be weighed against its potential to prolong hatred and suffering. War, when stripped of compassion, becomes self-perpetuating. The goal, therefore, is not the annihilation of an enemy, but the creation of conditions under which peace can once again take root. That requires discipline, empathy, and the ability to see the adversary as human, even in the midst of conflict. The greatest strength of any army lies not in its weapons, but in the moral restraint of those who wield them. When soldiers and commanders maintain their humanity amid destruction, they send a powerful message to the world that justice, not vengeance, guides their actions. This is what separates defenders from aggressors, liberators from occupiers. The Ukrainian struggle exemplifies this truth, that courage is not only found in the battlefield, but also in the conscience that governs it. To fight ethically in the face of overwhelming odds is to affirm that humanity can survive even in war's darkest hours. And when the guns finally fall silent, it is this moral integrity that will make peace possible, because true victory is not won through domination, but through the preservation of human dignity on both sides of the battlefield. National resilience and international resolve are the twin pillars that sustain a country in wartime. weapons and technology may decide the outcome of battles, but it is the spirit of the people and the unity of allies that determine the outcome of wars. Resilience is not built overnight. It grows in the hearts of ordinary citizens who refuse to surrender, in families who continue to rebuild even as bombs fall, and in leaders who inspire hope when the situation seems most desperate. In Ukraine's struggle, resilience has become more than a survival mechanism. It has become an identity. Every citizen from the front lines to the farmlands contributes to the strength of the nation by refusing to be broken. This endurance is not just physical, but psychological, rooted in a collective belief that freedom, no matter how costly, is worth defending. When Russia began its campaign, many predicted that Ukraine would crumble within days. Instead, the world watched as an entire population rose in defiance. Cities continued to function, communities adapted, and communication networks were rebuilt even after being struck. This spirit of resistance sent a message stronger than any weapon, that the will of the people is an unbreakable force. Resilience means finding power in unity, even when resources are scarce. It is neighbors sharing generators, teachers conducting online classes in bomb shelters, and soldiers returning from the front to volunteer in rebuilding efforts. This collective energy creates a feedback loop. As civilians endure, soldiers fight harder. As soldiers hold the line, civilians feel safer to carry on. Together they form a nation that cannot be subdued by fear. International resolve plays an equally crucial role in turning that resilience into sustainable strength. A nation fighting alone can resist, but a nation supported by allies can endure and prevail. Every shipment of humanitarian aid, every transfer of equipment, every diplomatic statement of support reinforces the idea that Ukraine's fight is not an isolated struggle, but a defense of global principles, sovereignty, freedom, and the right of nations to self-determination. The world's support is more than material. It is moral validation that strengthens the resolve of the defenders. It tells them their sacrifice is seen, that the world understands their cause, and that justice still has allies beyond their borders. However, maintaining international resolve requires patience and trust on both sides. For Ukraine, it means using support responsibly, with transparency and integrity, to prove that this assistance truly serves the cause of peace, and not endless conflict. For allies, it means understanding that endurance in war demands long-term commitment, not fleeting headlines or short-term political gain. The partnership between Ukraine and its supporters is not a charity. It is a strategic alliance built on shared values. When that alliance stays firm, it not only strengthens Ukraine, but also deters future aggression anywhere in the world. A united front tells every potential aggressor that the world will not stand idle in the face of invasion. National resilience also depends on leadership that can unite internal strength with external support. When leaders communicate honestly with their people and allies, they turn suffering into purpose. They show that every sacrifice contributes to a vision of a free, secure, and prosperous nation. This vision keeps morale alive when the cost of war becomes unbearable. True resilience, then, is not about hiding pain, but about enduring it with dignity. It is about transforming hardship into unity and loss into determination. In the end, wars are not won solely by firepower. They are won by willpower. Ukraine's resilience, supported by unwavering international resolve, proves that even in the face of overwhelming odds, a nation bound by purpose and supported by allies can rewrite its fate. This partnership between courage at home and solidarity abroad stands as a reminder that freedom is never granted. It is sustained by the strength of the many who believe it must never be lost.